Congrats for clicking on this video today. My name is Reverofenola, which is backwards for Forever Alone, and today we are on mission 5 of Devils and Swords. In this mission, we are actually switching it up a bit and using Kalina Ann to get rid of these blood gargoyles that you'll see in the first room. I mean, I've always been using Spiral for a bit in the previous videos, so this is just to switch it up a bit. Kalina Ann is also great for instantly turning most of these blood gargoyles into stone, which makes them vulnerable to damage. This mission also has 2 boss fights in it that you're required to beat in this game, particularly in the special edition. In the original version for this game, you only had to defeat the end game bosses or the end mission bosses, that being Agni and Rudra. But in this version, you actually have to do the additional boss fight of Jester. And Jester is arguably one of the worst boss fights in this game as well. So not only do you have Gigapede for mission 4, but you also have Jester being one of the worst boss fights in this game. So it's back to back, 2 for 2, terrible boss fights. So with Jester, you are only required to fight him once in the game, despite there being 3 missions where you can actually fight him. But again, you're only required to fight him once, which is what I will do in this playthrough, as the other 2 fights are just optional. Basically what you want to do in this boss fight is wait for his attack phase to stop, then he will disappear and then reappear in the middle of the room. Once he's in the middle of the room, shoot him until he's hit and staggered a bit, then just start attacking him with your favorite moves once he's stopped. For me, I tried jump canceling killer bees and somewhat failing and succeeding at them, so it's sort of like a 50-50 for me. It's easier for me to do this with this control scheme since I have the attack button on square and the jump button on X, so I usually just mash those 2 buttons together in order to get those hits off. But again, I'm not really completely used to using killer bees as much, even though they're the most optimal strat when it comes to taking on most enemies or bosses. Oh yeah, and I'm going into this mission with Trickster for once instead of the usual Royal Guard. Because Trickster, I use it for a few reasons for this mission, and one of those reasons is because of this boss fight. And I don't like this boss fight too much. Well, you already know that. You know what? I take back what I said. I've actually run out of reasons to actually use Trickster during this mission. I was having a mistaken memory. I was thinking of the elevator scene during this mission, and how you can skip the enemies if you choose to keep running up the walls using Trickster. And just to specify, the elevator scene where the enemies come from the rooftop and jump on the elevator, thus making it lower down. You can skip those enemies if you choose to run up the wall with Trickster. But if you're going for a double S rank, you shouldn't use that strat. That strategy, you should only use it if you're playing this mission for like the first time on new game, because it really helps avoid enemies when you don't have your whole skill set. But if you're going for a double S rank, you should not use that strategy. So technically I can switch back to Royal Guard after using, because I have no more further usage for Trickster. In fact, Royal Guard is especially useful for this upcoming boss. Speaking of bosses, despite Jester being a not so great boss fight, the boss, or rather the bosses for this mission, are actually pretty great, and Agni and Rudra are easily my top 5 favorite bosses in this game specifically because of how fun they are, especially when you go into that mission again with Royal Guard. Particularly after you've unlocked air block with Dante, where you can block in mid-air, which you should be able to unlock once you have Royal Guard up to level 2. But enough about bosses, we'll talk about them once we get to them, and let's focus on the enemies in this actual room. Again, I'm going into this mission with my favorite weapon, that being Navon, as the Enigma enemies in this room are weak to that. In fact, I think this room is the main reason why I even went into this mission with it, because I knew Enigmas would be here. But you can go into this room with any weapons you feel comfortable with. Just try not to get hit or receive too much damage in this room. And be sure to use Devil Trigger Flux a lot to rank up stylish points and overall give yourself an easier time against these enemies. Again, to use DT Flux, just hold down the Devil Trigger button until you see a lot of the DT runes light up, and then release it for big damage. Always try to do it when you are surrounded by a lot of enemies though. So again, try to earn as many orbs and stylish points as you can, but don't worry too much if you don't receive as much as you want to. This is because the elevator room should give you enough stylish points and orbs to get the double S rank. But granted, you definitely need your Sword Master rank to be level 3. Then again, this whole playlist is again assuming that you have all your styles maxed out, except for maybe Gunslinger. So I guess this is a bit of a confession, but I'm not going to be using Gunslinger much at all in this playlist. Mainly because it's probably my least favorite style of Dante's 4 main styles, because you really gotta change Dante's control scheme in order to fully utilize it. Like, I think it has to be similar to Nero with the whole charge shot 3 mechanic, in that you gotta map the button to a shoulder button, and changing control schemes in this game can be annoying since Dante and Virgil share the same control layout. But it's technically not the worst style in this game, as that title belongs to Doppelganger. And as you can see, or as you have already seen, I'm changing to Swordmaster in order to get ready for the elevator room. Swordmaster, to me at least, is a better style than Gunslinger thanks to some of Beowulf's skills as well as aerial raid, though I don't like much of Navon's skills in Swordmaster. So if I were to rank the 4 main styles, it would be Royal Guard, followed by Trickster, then Swordmaster, then Gunslinger. But back to this room, all you gotta do is switch to Swordmaster and then hold R1 back circle and then just charge it up for all the enemies to show up. Once you do it, make sure to kill all the enemies at once, and you should be able to make your orb requirement as well as your stylus requirement. Mainly the orb requirement because, again, I hate that mechanic when it comes to preparing for double S ranks in this game. And with that, that should be the last group of enemies you will face in this mission, as the last 2 enemies are of course the bosses Agni and Rudra. Once again, just like other sword bosses in Devil May Cry, this is one of my favorite boss fights in not only this game, but also the series in general. I will be switching to Royal Guard and using Cerberus just for backup damage for this boss fight. Now, for most of this fight, I won't really be using my weapons too much. It will just be Royal Guard, DT Flux, and some taunts. I do get hit a bit though because I forget to jump to dodge one of the attacks. But my main goal is that I usually aim to build up Royal Guard when they run to the back of the room and start doing jump attacks one at a time. When they do those attacks, they are very easy targets to get just frame Royal Guard air blocks from. Also, try to keep the damage between these 2 bosses roughly equal. Otherwise, once you kill one, the other one will just take the leftover sword and start dual wielding with it and start attacking you. It's a bit more difficult to face off against that boss, especially on new game, but again, try to keep the damage between the 2 of them equal. An easy way to keep the damage again equal is through using DT Flux. And similar to the Cerberus boss fight, both Agni and Rudra also have elemental weaknesses. Agni, the red one's element is fire, and he is of course weak to Cerberus, whose element is ice. Whereas Rudra, on the other hand, he's the blue one, his element is wind, and his weakness is of course Navon, which is electricity. Now, Cerberus is really helpful when playing this game on new game, as well as the damage he does is amazing, specifically for how limited Dante's moveset is when first starting out. So using Cerberus against Agni is really useful. But I kinda don't recommend using or bringing Navon for this boss fight, even if that is Rudra's weakness. Because again, as much as I love Navon, it isn't actually the best weapon when it comes to tackling boss fights in this game, at least in my opinion. You're honestly better off using Cerberus on him as well, or just using sticking to Royal Guard and using DT Flux on both of these demons. So as much as I love Navon, it's a lot better for crowd control. But that should be it. You should manage to get a double S rank if you follow this guide. If you like this video, or if you like this whole playlist in general, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. I have tons of other videos, particularly dedicated to Megami Tensei, Shin Megami Tensei, Persona, Kingdom Hearts, as well as Sonic the Hedgehog. So be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you have not. This is Reverofenola signing out. Ciao.